Hello and welcome. I am Cyril Stober. For some time now, public affairs commentators have been examining what has come to be known as the Nigerian question. Put more clearly, what are the ideals of integration, nationalism and patriotism in a country richly diverse in human and material resources, but wanting in good governance and national ethics for development? Today, on the eve of another election year to choose the nation's leaders, I sit with an expert as we talk about national integration, governance, and Nigeria's development. Professor Kabir Isa is a professor of governance with degrees in political science. He has been an academic and teaching staff of the Department of Local Government and Development Studies, Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, since 1992. Professor Isa has had over 2 decades of extensive research and publication experiences, especially in the field of social movements and social transformation, with specific focus on management of ethnicity and ethnic conflicts, conflict and peace studies, terrorism and militancy, countering violent extremism, and local government and management administration, among so many others. He has participated in numerous local and international conferences and currently a member of a research network in Africa, UNESCO Most Ethnonet Network, member International Research Society for Public Management, and also a pioneer think tank member of Researching Solutions to Violent Extremism, Resolve Network, New York, United States of America. Let's welcome Professor Mohammed Kabir Isa. Thanks for being with us on One-on-One.
My pleasure to be here.
Right. There's so many things we can look at when we talk about governance, social development. Well, Nigeria is on the threshold of another election, and yet there are so many issues that seem unresolved. The question of national integration. Let's begin on that premise.
Yes, thank you very much. Being academic, I think it's very cogent to get us clear about what national integration is. National integration is when a group of people or a society decided to come together and are bounded by socio-cultural and socio-economic and political structures. Socio-economic, cultural and political structures or architectural structures are bounded together, and they use these structures to pursue common ideals. And this society may have certain cultural affinities or history together. They share certain common history, they share certain common antecedents or cultural background, or share certain affinities in the past, and decide to come together to say, we want to pursue these ideals. And to a large extent, they would have been working together to pursue that ideal. So they have a national image, they have a national feeling, they have a national identity, and they have a national, national outlook about where they want to be in the immediate and in the future past.
Very interesting. You say people decide to come together.
Yeah.
So how do you respond? In the case of Nigeria, some say Nigerians, well, those we know now as Nigerians, didn't willingly come together. They didn't decide. It was the colonialists who brought them together in 1914 and said, look, this is a country. So on that premise, what would you say?
Very true that Nigeria is a product of colonial rule or imperialism, if you like, because colonialism is a precursor of imperialism. Imperialism is outward sphere of influence, economic influence. Now the Europeans realized that the sphere of influence is not enough because they started rivaling each other. For example, France and Italy nearly fought a war over Somalia. Britain and Germany nearly fought a war over the Cameroons and so on. So with the Berlin Conference, they shared out the territories under the chairmanship of the Ottoman von Bismarck of Germany, 1884-85. They shared out territories, and which led to colonial domination. So colonial domination is total, complete rule. So it's true that yes, the entity called Nigeria is a product of colonial rule. But please let's correct one fact: we are Africans, and the history of Africa is a history of, over the years, history of movements of people, particularly in the 11th, 12th, 13th century. Africans were moving. There are a lot of wars, conflicts, and so on. So it's a myth to say that there was no linkage between us. In spite of the fact that, yes, we were certain ethnic groups, but there was some form of linkages between these groups, okay? So they were not groups that existed autonomous and single entity as if they were a mass, or in Pluto or Jupiter. No, Africans related with each other along the line. And that is why you find certain myths saying that Odudua, apart from descending from heaven, came from the east. And there's another myth that the Igbos are the lost seventh tribe of Israel. So did they fly from Israel to Igbo land? Did the Yorubas jump from Middle East did the Hausas fly from Iraq to Hausa land? So it's a myth to say that Nigerians did not relate. If you look into archival history, all these ethnic groups related with each other in one way or the other. If you look, for example, there are even certain concepts. Kakaki, for example, Dainshiki in Yoruba language, is Hausa root. It has Arabic root. It has Hausa root. It has Arabic origin, which shows to the fact that, yes, we had some form of linkage. But these linkages were at the level of trade.
Okay.
And so that would be the case. But with colonialism, yes, what we need to factor in was that with colonialism came decolonization. There were uprising, there was nationalist struggle, contestation, demand for independence. So those who demanded for independence fought segregation because the colonialists brought about uneven development, segregationist policies, divide and rule policies. And so the nationalist leaders struggled to inherit Nigeria. But they were successful at one level. They were able to bring discerning groups. Prior to colonial rule, you were either a Bakabe, Bazazagi, Bakatsini, Bakano. But with colonial rule, they were able to come together as Ariwa, Northerners. With colonialism, the Egbaman, the Ekitiman, the Ondoman, the Ijeshaman, and the Ibadaman, and so on, all came together to form Egbe Omo Odua as onslaught to colonial rule. And the same thing, the Igbos. Prior to colonialism, there was nothing like Handis and Igbo. There was nothing like Egbe Omo Odua. Each group were busy, in fact, they were busy fighting themselves. I recall reviewing an article from Europe, in International Labour Institute, and I found out how an Ibadan and Ijebu man changing identity because of cocoa that was introduced under colonial rule. And so if the Ibadan chased the Ijebu people out of the territory because they fought over territorial land, and if the Ijebu people chase Ibadan people, same group of people for cocoa will claim that, have you forgotten, I'm Ijebu, your man. If the Ibadan come, we say, no, I'm Ibadan man. So, which shows that over the years, there was some, but colonialism brought people to form this. Now, our failure, or what really happened, was the fact that after colonialism, we did not make attempt to move beyond that level.
So wherein lies this assumption that the nationalists who fought the colonialists
Yes.
were all united and they bequeathed to us some ideal cohesion and integration, which we lost over time.
Yes. Don't forget, the nationalists realized the need that Nigeria as an entity must survive. They realized that they cannot fall back to the old nation-state empire. And by the way, the colonialists themselves did not want the state to collapse. They had created a state, an overdeveloped state, but with weak structures. And they prepared this category of people to inherit them. And there were other external factors. The Second World War ended. America emerged as a superpower after the end of the war. And America had no sphere of influence. And it wanted an area of economic influence because it had amassed resources from war. And so it forced these people to give you the Marshall Plan. To give you loan for the Marshall Plan, you must open up your overseas territories for American interests, onslaught of America. That forced a lot of these empires to relinquish independence, not by their own design, but because they want to revamp their war-torn economies as well. So a lot of internal factors and external factors worked. And many Nigerians who fought along the British in the Second World War realized that too, the British were fighting for their own independence and they were fighting domination. So they came back and fueled the fire for independence. Now the euphoria and the feeling then was that if we get independence, it will be uhuru, freedom. There will be development. Honey and sugar will flow. But they forgot that those who ruled had economic interests and would not want to relinquish this. And Africa is a land of resources, blessed with resources. And these empires had little or no resources. And so they put in place structures to ensure, and that's what we call multilateralism, to ensure the continued grip and hold of the economy and society and people of this region after independence. And that is why independence development is a mirage to some scholars, except if we break away. Some people argue autarky, complete, total breakaway. Some people, like Nkrumah, would argue, seek ye the political what? Independence first, and all other things will fall in place. Okay? And so there are different views up until the early 80s. Now we are in the age of globalization. The world has moved beyond multilateralism. We're in the age of, and we're moving towards the fourth industrial revolution. In fact, it's at the door. We're just at the inch of the fourth industrial revolution, the digital divide, the digital world, where, space and time will be conscripted, will be mashed into one. And that is that you can move from here to London and you're in this space. You can move from here to Malaysia and you're in this space. And that is the logic of the fourth industrial revolution. So where would Nigeria be?
Right. Now, we went into all of this because we're trying to understand the current challenges that seem intractable in Nigeria today. Right? The colonialists set up a structure for their own greed.
Yes.
But then it's been 60 years
of independence.
So what happened? Do we lack the knowledge, the know-how to break free of those shackles?
Well, the colonialists, when they were living, they created a group of people. They made sure they created and nurtured a group of people to take over from them. And this group of people, after independence, and that's why you see our nationalists tried to build regional governments, regional entities. And beyond that, those who inherited the nationalists failed in their endeavor to build in Nigeria. A very good launch pad for building Nigeria was after the Civil War. Immediately after colonialism, politics was decided along regional lines. Politics, power, economy was determined along regional lines. So to gain anything, you must belong to a particular region. It was not merit. It was not by qualification. It was not by the fact that you qualify, you merit, you have achieved, you have performed. No. Your performance, your merit means you go and represent a region. And that regional mentality was what we carried into national life. And that is why we have failed to move beyond that. And all the things that followed, the Civil War, all of these are, and that is why we're still living the ghost of the past. People today are demanding for independence, Biafra state. There is the Boko Haram. There are the bandits carving out territories in ungoverned space. And the structure of governance is still weak 60 years after independence, because the leaders have failed to realize and to even appreciate the need to build in Nigeria. We have failed to build Nigeria. We have built regional entities that are tripods in the making of Nigeria, but we have not successfully, built in Nigeria. And there's in Nigeria by geographical space and definition. There are people called Nigerians, but in terms of integrating people to have sentiments, and that is why if you go onto the street, people violate the law. There's no rule of law. There's no respect for law because there's no sentiment. And this is where patriotism comes in. The love of country comes in. The love of the nation.
Why should I be patriotic if my country doesn't give me what I deserve?
Again, it brings us back to the fact that the leaders who are supposed to build, and I said, one great opportunity lost is the post-Civil War era. With the 3 R's from Gowan: reconstruction, rehabilitation, and restitution. If we have launched Nigeria, with programs like NYSC and so on and so forth, the unity schools, the primary schools, and then you find out that there was massive injection of resources to build the nation. But we failed to build the mind, to build the thinking. The Chinese, after the revolution, the Chinese revolution, decided to say, hold on, let's have a cultural revolution first before we pursue economic and political revolution. And that is why anywhere you go, any Chinese development you see, it has a Chinese cultural imprint on it. Anywhere you go, you see China. In fact, you look at our structure, the airport. If you look carefully, nobody you do, except if you're blind, you will see certain things cultural about the design that it is Chinese. And in Nigeria, we are building structures with foreign cultural input because we have failed to define what is a Nigerian culture. Who are the Nigerian people? How do you identify Nigerians? And that is why we're still talking about federal character, we're still talking about quota, we're still trying to solve the problem of 1920 to 50s in 2000. And that is why even when you talk about constitutional conference, you're talking about elections, and people are talking about going back to 1967 constitution in 2022. They're living in the past. So again, it tells you that the mentality of our political elite, because it's one thing to say leaders. The leaders are a group among the ruling elite. It's a problem of the ruling elite. They are yet to get it right about what Nigeria should look like. And not until for example, look at Qatar, look at the sport that just concluded, the World Cup. Everywhere you go, there's an imprint of what is the culture, the national identity of the people of Qatar. And they refuse because they were all united. They understand what is their culture, what is their identity. Okay? And that is why they refuse to bulge to any pressure, any global pressure, to change who they are. And look at, they successfully hosted the World Cup. And it is adjudged to be the best World Cup ever because they had an identity. And it is wrong for people to say that, no, we are a disparate group of people. No. America is a multicultural society. Canada is a multicultural society. Switzerland is a multicultural society. India is a multicultural society. So if India today is shipping out expats, all the CEOs of the major leading gig company in the world are by Indians. And they invested in education. Education has a key role. Singapore's success, moving from a third world country to a middle income, today to one of the first emerging first world country, is not, they have no resources. Singapore was experiencing what we were in 1960. What magic? What mean? Because the ruling elite realized that there is a need for them to have a Singapore. For example, taking you back to economic nationalism. You cannot invite people to come and invest in your economy when they know that the bulk of the ruling elite have stashed resources in foreign banks, offshore accounts. If these people can bring back this money, because there's an efficiency theory of economics, growth theory, that says that allow some people through corrupt means to enrich themselves, but they must invest in production to generate employment. And when they generate employment, purchasing power increases, and workers are able to what? Purchase. It changes the economy and production. So with this, Nigeria has the potential to be Nigeria, but we must identify through nation building and state building. These two processes must lead to national integration, not constitutional conference. You can have all the constitutions you have, but if there are no human beings to live for example, we have traffic laws. People violate traffic laws because there's no respect for the law. Everywhere you go, at every strata, people impunity. And so it shows you that people are Nigerians, but there's no Nigerian in their hearts. And we need to have people, and it can only come about if we have a set of rulers. For example, look at America. At a point, America was called the Wild Wild what? West. What happened? There was a lot of corruption. There was a lot of, wars that led to the North-South war and what have you. But how did they come out of it? At a point, the mafia was contesting space with the state. But some people went back and said, hey, we want to build a nation. And we must have a nation. So let's sit together and see. So police were arresting police and jailing police to correct society. For example, today if I say something now, people will, if we can remove the head of police and bring somebody from abroad, we look at Dubai, we celebrate Dubai. The bulk of the people in the Emirates are not educated. They pay people to come and deliver for them because they already have a vision of who they are, who they want to be. They pay people to be head of central bank. They pay people to lead. So we want to insist on inbreeding, silos. We operate. So everything Nigeria must be Nigerian. If there's somebody somewhere who will help us deliver on what we want, let's pay him to do that.
Okay. Well, some would say to you that it would seem that in the past, when I was growing up, it was a lot safer to be in any part of this country, and they felt that there was more integration. The people related better.
Yeah.
So the question is, what happened along the line? Was it economic? Was it political? What was it that suddenly neighbors began to be suspicious of neighbors? And now we have heard leaders from different ethnic groups who say, look, I think first as one of this ethnic group before I think of being a state and before I think of being Nigeria. What happened?
Again, this is the fallout of, like I earlier pointed out, the growth path of Nigeria, where we evolved from regionalism and we failed to move to that space called Nigeria. We have a geographical entity called Nigeria. And this is largely the bulk of elite. It is largely the problem of our elite, regional elites, who use regions as a basis for contestation for power.
But we have always believed that when you do such, you would generate more development. We left the regions, we went to states. We fragmented more states. And right now, more people are calling for more states.
I'm not talking about the structure or the architecture of governance in Nigeria. I'm talking about people. You see, all of these structures is for what? For people. And not everybody can lead. So we have a set of leaders who use their background, regional and geopolitical zone and ethnicity and religion to advance their personal interests. Because if you look at all of our leaders, for example, look at all the political leaders, who has gone back to his village to build a university or build a better road, build a better hospital, or build a better clinic? Or no. They're self-serving and self-seeking. But they would always use ethnicity, religion, and geopolitical zone to advance their personal interests. And this is where Nigeria is failing. And not until we evolve a set of leaders or ruling elites, because there are people who are leaders, but they're not ruling. They determine who rules. And not until these people move out of that space, Nigeria will not move.
Professor Kabir Isa, do you accept the saying that the people get the leaders they deserve?
I will, in my very little understanding of politics and the way we have evolved, I don't think that is very so correct, because that saying has some religious coloration to it. Yep. But I would not want to align myself, because I'm not discussing religion, but in looking at the trajectory and the history of Nigeria and the way we have evolved and where we have found ourselves today, I would say that it's a failure of our ruling elite to move us from point D to EFG after independence, 60 years after independence. People still have a regional mentality. People have an ethnic mentality, not a Nigerian mentality. And it is for self-seeking. I've been avoiding a point. Look, in other Sena climes, for example, in Malaysia and Singapore and Indonesia, the Asian tiger, it is wrong. If it is not investment, it is wrong in national ethos. It's something wrong nationally for you to have money stashed abroad, irrespective of how you have gotten the money. So bring the money to develop our economy, grow our people. And this is how Singapore has evolved. Singapore doesn't have a quarter of the resources that Nigeria possesses today. Okay? So a lot of it's sad to note that one of the driving force of terrorism today, between 2013 to date, is resources, not religion, as you assume. A lot of the drivers of the banditry today is not anything but resources. Because, for example, are we producing guns in Africa or in Nigeria? Do we have a guns factory in Nigeria? Are we producing bullets in Nigeria? Our defense industry is only producing furniture. It was created the same time with that of Brazil. That of Brazil is exporting engines, airplane engines, buses, and what have you, and producing, tankers. Ours are still producing vests and furniture and spoon. Meanwhile, in Africa, there are no war industry. Where are these large caches of arms flowing like a river, like River Niger? General Abdul Salam informed us in early 2001 that about 6 million illegal guns and arms within the territory in Nigeria. So where's the war? But who is pumping these guns in Africa?
Now, the point that can be made here is, if we apportion that much blame to the ruling elite,
yes,
as you choose to call them, what about the followership? Don't they have a part in this blame? I mean, if you freely entrust the leadership of your society to a group of people and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, don't you do something about it?
Have you listened to the debate about the cashless policy in Nigeria, in the National Assembly? What's the debate all about? They're saying that the cashless policy cannot work. Why? Because people in the rural area are what? No infrastructure, no light, and they are illiterate, they are uneducated, they have very little knowledge. And we are talking about that the cashless policy will lead to inclusion, financial what? Inclusion. It means deliberately we know, and our leaders know, that yes, people in the rural area are uneducated. So mass followership of the people are illiterate, are uneducated. So how do you blame people who don't know?
So education is key here.
Thank you, sir. And we are killing it. I wouldn't even want to go into it deeply because it affects me personally. And I'm finding it very difficult to divorce myself in a discussion and the issues. It's very, very passionate. But look at look at public primary school. In other climes, in Rwanda, the private sector are now begging government to give them allocation. People prefer to go to the public schools. All the schools, all the universities in South Africa are largely public owned. In any case, South Africa has a budding, thriving economy, private sector. In Nigeria, we don't have a private sector. People look towards government. Government is treated as an employment generation agency, be it at the local government level, state level, and at federal level. In fact, I remember in 2018, I was engaging some youth in the Northeast on a program sponsored by UNDP for SDG and so on. And I was telling all the young boys there who are graduates, what are you waiting for? Go into agriculture. They said, no, they want to go to Abuja to work, or Lagos or Port Harcourt. I said, work where? They said either NEMA, CBN, and I said, look, all of these agencies you are mentioning, people are not dying. The federal government workers are not up to 1 million people. And look at graduates every year. You are about 2 to 3 million. So when will somebody die? What is the rate of people retiring that you want to enter? How many of you want to enter? Look other way. Why have you gone to a higher institution and you can't? All the agencies of government, federal government, in fact, the largest employer of labor in Nigeria today is the local government. The largest employer of labor in Nigeria is the local government. And so where is the job you are looking for? And so there are a lot of problems. We must have a private sector. In South Africa, only failures are employed in government. Weak, high-flying, high-grade products in terms of educational performance are employed in, and there's more job security in the private sector in South Africa. I've been to South Africa about a couple of times, about 8 times, and I've taught about 5 out of the 9 provinces in South Africa, and so I know the economy very well.
Now, you just touched on another area, the local government, and this is one place we'll be talking about. After this short break, we'll return and discuss governance, especially at the local level. We'll take a break here. Join us later for more.
We can file your Saturday delight, going to places from the obscure to the hinterland and cities, bringing you development stories and perspectives, connecting the people with government and stakeholders on critical issues of our national life.
We are live in Abuja.
It's 9 p.m. every Saturday on the network service of the NTA. Weekend File. You can't afford to miss it.
Why should we be in a difficult situation financially?
Once upon a time we were rich, but we're not a rich country anymore.
Disaster management is everybody's business.
In all these times, the organization turned to Nigeria.
We would as much want to harness the capacity that is within us so that we see how we can become self-reliant.
1 month ended and you said you are increasing warning strike by 2 months. I mean, you are incubating madness.
Even if these are officials of government who have been told to go and enforce the law and they have gone against the law itself, they must be held accountable.
One-on-One, Friday, 10:30 p.m. on NTA Network. Thanks for staying with us. My guest is still here, Professor Kabir Isa, and we're looking at national integration and so many other issues, matters arise. And just before the break, we mentioned something about the local government, and that brings us to a key part of this discourse. Governance. You teach this. What's wrong with our local government system? Why is it that it is the way it is?
One of the major challenges of local government was the fact that as a result of the series of several transition programs that we have had, when the military want to transit from military to civil rule, whatever they want to test, they try it at the local government level. In 76, for example, there was a zero-party, elections was conducted, zero-party basis for the local governments. And then by 78, political parties were registered, and then they told them to go and contest election at the local government level. They should go and test their mettle, prove themselves at the local government level before power was transited to them. And so for every transition program came, in fact, more than any level of government, the local government has seen a lot of vicissitude, a lot of, changes, rejigging and restructuring, if you like, just to always keep it in tune with modern reality. And by that, it made the local government the basis of governance in Nigeria. And in any case, if you go back to colonial era, the colonialists actually ruled using the local government. And that was why you had native authority in the north and all across Nigeria. And in the north, you had two types of local government, chief and council, and then chief and council. Chief and council had more powers. Chief and council had a little, and the same thing applied. While in the southeast, they had different structure altogether, given their nature, the nature of the socio-political nature of the society there. But then warrant chiefs were introduced, and there was imposition, and what followed subsequently. Now, the local government is the basis of Nigeria. If you talk about governance and the structure of governance in Nigeria, local government was the basis. In fact, with the richest constitution, which gave regional autonomy, started the process of independence. So independence and relinquishing power started with the local government. Handing over power started with the local government. Because when regional autonomy was granted to the regions, one of the things that they gave the regions to do was to legislate and exercise authority over the local government area. And so the Southeast started a local government reform in 1950. The Southwest did its local government reform 1952. Then the North did its own local government reform 1954. All of these reforms were now introducing elective positions into the local councils. And so the local councils are seeing a lot of vicissitude of authority and power. However, what has this done to the local government? Over time, particularly with the transition program, it made the local government the centerpiece of any elective process. Because even the wards you have are delineated along the local government wards are delineated along electoral wards. So anybody who wants to be governor is interested in who are the powers that be in a particular locality. And so the local government is the structure for winning election. Anybody who wants to be president in Nigeria wants to be president by knowing that whoever is governor or who aspires to be governor has some leverage or control over the local government. So in 79, when the first governors were elected, what did they do? They sacked all the elected local government council. In their place, appointed sole administrators and caretaker committee, because governors wanted complete and total control. For you to control your state, you must control the local government. And the resources accruing, because local government got a prime of place with the 1976 reform, which brought the local government into the 1979 constitution. Coincidentally, in 2015, I was at an international conference, and the Australians were asking me, how did we get our local government into the constitution? Because they listened to my paper and they said, the local governments are mentioned in the constitution. I said, yes, that they've spent 2 decades trying to get local government into the Australian constitution. So the local government became very central to power struggle, contestation for power, and who becomes governor and president. And don't forget, if you are to be a governor, you must have 25% vote in every local government and win majority vote. So which made the local government. And so by 79, governors and then created local government. Same thing, after 79, the 1989, people sacked the local government chairman elected and were trying to impose caretaker. And after 2003, from 2003, the chairmen that were elected 98 finished their tenure in 2003. There were no elections in 92% of the states in Nigeria for over 10 years.
Has the situation changed? Because even where you do have elections, they are swept clean
Yes.
by the ruling
Party.
in the state.
Yes, this lends credence to my point. Now, unfortunately, what has this done? Created ungoverned spaces. Because the local government have certain structures to deal with security. And they deal with all the security apparatus of the state in their locality. Now, with Section 162 of the 1999 Constitution, subsection 7, 8, 9, and so on, the joint account, local governments get allocation from the federation account, and it is shared among the constituents based on equality, revenue effort, primary school enrollment, geographical location, population, and what have you. Now, those are not the criteria used. Today, particularly from 2003, it's not a problem of now, but it is worse in this era. It started with they delineated what are the through so-called taking stock of staff. They determine what were the salaries. So once they pay salaries, they give something overhead or security vote. The remaining money go in the guise of joint project. Once the allocations are shared, chairman, and that is why those who control the state, including the governor, not just the governor, those who hold the power and reins of power in the state, ensure that they determine who gets to be chairman of a local government.
But then there have been attempts to ensure autonomy for the local government. And surprisingly,
yes,
even from the states and local governments themselves, it would seem that they're not interested in autonomy. I once held a program here where a state chief executive told me that he would gladly grant autonomy to the state, but up to the local government. But that the local governments could not survive and they didn't want that autonomy.
That's not true. That's not true. He's speaking on behalf of a certain group of people. But we know in every saner climb, the local government being the bedrock of governance. So people will want to vote.
Right. You recall an attempt at one time to ensure.
In fact,
and the local governments voted against it.
No, not the local government, sir. The State House of Assemblies voted against it, not the local government. The State House of Assemblies. There are about 4 attempts. This is the 5th attempt, I guess, to grant local government autonomy. The 5th attempt is the executive order by the president. But in terms of rejigging the constitution, the problem is not at the National Assembly. The National Assembly has successfully, but to alter the constitution, you need to third. As at the last exercise, only 16th State House of Assembly.
The members of the state assemblies are representatives of those local governments, and they say that's what their people have told them.
In 2016, I conducted a study. We conducted a study for Chatham House, I think on behalf of World Bank also, and focusing on the Northeast. And I looked, there's the people who looked at the economic side, I looked at the political side. And in the Northeast, and as large as the Northeast is, I am sure the Northeast, as a microcosm of research, will represent the entirety of Nigeria. We found out that a lot of the people voted into the State House of Assembly were voted on the behest or sponsored by certain powers that be in the state, and they control the state resources. And this lends credence to my fact that this brings you back to my theory that not until this set of people realize the need to have Nigeria, we can never have. So we now realize that we have an example of a budget process which takes nothing less than 3 months. In a State House of Assembly, the governor submitted it within 24 hours, it was approved. Budget, which takes 3 months. They must do an evaluation. They must assess. Within 24 hours in the Northeast, the budget was approved. I will not mention the states. And we have bills. Governors bring bills. Look, members of State House of Assembly are contractors in the name of oversight functions. They are contractors. They infuse projects and they go to ministries and collect in the name of oversight. And it's also in Malay, which is also aligned with the National Assembly. The SDG, the constituency project, there are a lot of studies and reports on all of this, which shows that all of these characters are members of their contractors in the guise of politicians. They have one political bag on one hand, constituency bag, and then the company bag on the other hand. And so, not until we go, like I said earlier, America sat back and said, we cannot allow our country to deteriorate. And that is why the elite sat back and said, we must. And that is why people in America say, what do you have to offer the country? The country first.
Now, I suppose we should look at how to get out of this. But where does it begin from? Where do you start? The people, the leaders, or both? Because we've seen situations where some leaders have emerged and stood up for the right thing.
Oh, sure.
But the followers would say, no, you can't do this. It's our turn.
Yes. Unfortunately, when we look at things, we tend to forget the decay and the deterioration that our society has gone towards. If you look at state structures are collapsing. The nation Nigeria is collapsing. But luck is that we still have people who believe in the Nigerian project. But these people believe that our political process is fraught with a lot of trappings. There are a lot of trappings, and therefore they cannot participate in politics. Unfortunately, if you do not come out to participate in politics, if the people who have eyes to see cannot come out and lead, the blind will surely lead them, or people with one eye will lead them, and that's what's happening. Unfortunately, in 1999, the transition from 98 to 99, not many people believed in the transition because of several failed transition attempts. And so we have bred a category of people, and not a group, a category of people who call themselves politicians, and they've turned politics into an enterprise, a craft. And not until we reverse that process, people of like mind must wake up in Nigeria and see the need to transform Nigeria. Nigeria is blessed. Of every 6 Africans you see, 4 are Nigerians. Every 6 intellectual in Africa. This is a BBC report in 2011. Of every 6 intellectual you see in Africa, 4 are Nigerians. So what else do we need? And Nigeria is a production factory of ideas. And you can see, with the level of, success is being recorded by Nigerians abroad. And even in Nigeria, look at the technocraft, the technopreneurs, or, the digitalpreneurs we have in Nigeria. Look at what they are bringing out. It shows you that Nigeria is a bastion of, knowledge production. But we're killing it. We're destroying it. And we must recover Nigeria. And the only way we can recover Nigeria is for the right thinking people to come and say, hey, let's hold on a minute. Let's look. Where do we want to take Nigeria to? Let me add just a few points. In July of 2021, right, America landed on Mars. UAE, that came to borrow money from us in 1970, are hovering the atmosphere of Mars. China landed in Mars, a rover in Mars, that same month with US, July 2021, and 3 months after, landed a rover. And that same period, it landed another rover on the moon. Today, we are saying that the World Bank in 2002 said that in 30 years to come, the world will fight a war for water resources. They are discovering water on asteroids. They are discovering that certain asteroids have more gold, 10 times the number of gold on Earth. They are discovering rich minerals. Does that strike you about Mungo Park, the Livingston brothers, the Williamsons, and Mary Slaughter's? They are discovering the outer space. They are exploring resources, just like they came to Africa. Where is Nigeria in all of this? We are busy fighting 16th, 17th century war. So not until we have leaders who have the vision We want to take Nigeria. We want to be part of, in 20 years, we want to be part of the struggle to deliver Nigeria in
But
space.
how do you get the leaders? Because it's from the people you select those who would lead. And everyone would say, what's the recruitment process? And
that is where the challenge is. For politics, yes, the recruitment process does not favor. And, you know, people are saying that this 2023 elections, how we should make it free and fair. The process of election, voting is the tail end of election. Election starts from when when political parties start selecting candidates. For me, these are not the best candidates that our electoral process, our electoral value chain.
So the challenge is from
the political. We don't have political parties, I'm sorry to say. We have political associations. People of like, and that is why, because they are bereft of ideology, they don't have a vision. All these mandates they bring to you, they are mandates that are inclined towards growth theory of sectoral development. If you look, they are talking about urban development, not development from a composite, total, complete picture. And so they are talking about urban renewal, building second Niger bridge, building airport. What we want is a Nigeria which feeds itself first. The immediate thing is to have agriculture. And when I talk about agriculture, not pick rice and say we have increased rice production. So what? Not pick tomato and say no. The entire value chain of agriculture. There must be a revolution in agriculture because that's where we are. Then we begin to link agriculture to production. Simultaneously, while agriculture is rising, people must invest in production. We must draw a line. If you have money outside, like the Panama Papers reveal, like the Pandora Papers, the Madonna Papers reveal, bring the money back and invest. If you don't, we criminalize you. Simple. You are an enemy of the people. If you have Nigerians' money, we will not take it from you as long as you bring it and invest in Nigeria. Economic nationalism. Come and invest the money in Nigeria. But when you stash it out there, it is not doing anything. And they are using that money and giving us back as loan. Then that's imperialism. That's domination. That's neocolonialism in a new form of domination. Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Professor Kabir Isa, I wish this conversation would go on for much longer. But I always say this, and no one program can capture everything.
Sure.
And so we must leave this discussion at this point. And thank you very much.
My pleasure.
For availing us of your time.
My pleasure.
And your thoughts on the issues of integration and development. And these are issues afflicting Nigeria.
Unfortunately, Nigeria can be the beacon of rainbow country in the world. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for coming on this program.
Thank you very much.
And we look forward to asking you to come again, and so we can expand the frontier, the scope. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week, we'll be back with One-on-One. I'm Cyril Stober. Continue to stay safe.